have you noticed online that everything, and I mean literally everything, has been turned into an aesthetic? Clean girl aesthetic, messy girl aesthetic, coquette. But the internet didn't make aesthetics, as visual pleasure has existed for as long as humans have had eyes and a light source, but it escalated it to unimaginable levels. So today, I'm talking about why everything's suddenly an aesthetic, and what it means when our struggle gets romanticized into energy. Look up almost anything online. If you scroll for long enough, you'll probably find a video, probably edited by some teenager on CapCut, capturing the perfectly curated vibe of a certain time period, event, person, or movie. You name it, it has a song, photos to match, and a text box displaying exactly the energy you're internalizing. And even I'm not immune to this. I did it in my last video, it'll probably be in this video, and I'm sure it'll be in my other videos to come. But it's not for no reason. It just seems to work. Because how else am I supposed to describe the 2016 grunge era, other than with core Tumblr photos itself? But the real question is, why does it work? Well, there are a couple factors at play here. First, it gives the gratification of instant identity. We see something we like, a vibe, a photo, a color scheme. And as humans, we want to align ourselves with that thing we find so appealing. And instead of having to do the hard work of figuring out what we like, we just pick a vibe and it acts like a starter pack. Now, this isn't to make a generalization that all people picking their aesthetic are just spinning a wheel and seeing where it lands. There is something to say in the initial draw itself. But isn't it so much easier to be yourself when there's already a pre-curated Pinterest board full of clothes, music, and life inspo for you to start from? And the existence of those factors harbors the implication that leads me to my second point: community. If you present yourself a certain way, it signals to those around you a certain sort of shared interest, allowing for a point of connection. It's why when people have crushes, or just really want to be friends with someone, they tend to peacock their style, traits, and mannerisms to appear more similar. We're attracted to what we can relate to, so something you enjoy existing online indicates the presence of others, at least enough for one person to make a video, and for it to get traction. By sticking with an aesthetic, you intentionally put yourself in a box that invites others with shared interests for a point of connection and relationship. Next, having a defined aesthetic and overall whimsical attitude towards life allows it to feel intentional again. In the modern age of social media and news cycles, there are a million pieces of information being thrown at us at every second, and slowing down and romanticizing your kitchen restock or morning routine can make us feel better. It gives us agency, excitement, and meaning, and allows us to feel as though we're doing it for ourselves, therefore reinstating our purpose. We're not just cleaning a kitchen, we're making a self-care day out of it, and there was born the Sunday reset. However, the opposite of that is also a factor in why aesthetics are so appealing. It's the escapism it gives to us. Instead of using aesthetics to enhance everyday life, some choose to discard of it completely and run away into this perfectly curated fantasy. Ironically, these two opposing ideas of enhancement and escapism offer the same core ideas at the end of the day. They give us control, excitement, and purpose. Aesthetically living allows those to go from a world where they're not themselves, agonizing over their pre-calc homework at 3 a.m, 2 energy drinks deep, but they transform their world into a place where they're a princess, studying, being watched by the royal court, or Rory Gilmore grinding to get into Harvard. Overall, aesthetics offer different things to different people, but at the end of the day, give us one beautifully curated package with an overtly obscure name. The strange online obsession with aesthetics wasn't something I noticed until this October when news broke loose about the Louvre heist. First, I found out about it through TikTok, which is probably a scale issue on my part, with me opting to spend more time on social media than consuming things of actual substance like the news, but that's not what irked me. What did it was not finding out the news through TikTok, which I'm sure isn't even super uncommon these days in teens, but because I found out about it through a TikTok that was showing aesthetic Pinterest photos from the museum, while Robbers by the 1975 played under it with text saying what the Louvre heist probably felt like. I thought this was strange, but then the videos literally didn't stop. People were making playlists, curating vibes, and the kicker, headcanons. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, a TikToker by the name Betting Ways posted a video where he shared his Louvre headcanons. A headcanon is basically someone, generally a fan or viewer's personal interpretation of a work of literature or fiction, where the characters are still up for a little bit of creative freedom, and they often have some sort of addition from the creator that is not explicitly confirmed or denied by the original work. These headcanons all consisted of pictures of conventionally attractive teens, none of whom were friends, by the way, who all had specific roles in the crime, like Carlos, 19, from Spain, who hacked the mainframe and is good with computers.
And by the way, I'm not making fun of this creator. When I initially saw the video, I fell for it too. But I'm getting off topic. We're living in a world where the Louvre heist, an actual crime, has become something more of an aesthetic. Teenagers across platforms saw this opportunity and took it, turning turtlenecks and broken crowns into something beautiful. This instance shows the sheer power of the aesthetic, because now when I think of the heist, I don't even think of the crime itself. I think of the aesthetic connotations behind it. It was a Halloween costume, a playlist, a rebellious Parisian vibe, and the people, including me, ate it up. The hardest part about this so-called aesthetic epidemic is not becoming aware of it in the first place, but coming to terms with the fact that no matter how hard you try, you can almost never be immune to it. I fell victim to Carlos 19, and I'm sure I will again and again and again. But it reveals the subtle yet powerful influence that the aesthetic holds, and how it can absolutely transform a concept. Think about all of the huge aesthetics from the last couple years. Cottagecore took the extremely unglamorous reality of living on a farm, bugs, dirt, smells, and turned it into a fantasy about twirling in a field like you're in a butter commercial. Charli XCX's brat, party girl lifestyle aesthetic is basically just a drug addiction marked by glitter and flashing rave lights. But nothing compares to the aesthetic of struggle. When I'm hungover, eating crackers at 1 p.m. over my sink in a stained hoodie, I'm doing Rat Girl Summer. If you think about it, it's so deeply human that we have turned a universal struggle into a communal space, but it gets to a point where it goes too far. Seasonal depression seems like a vibe when it's presented in a lighthearted manner. When you're at the beach with your friends mid-July, and you guys are all talking and kind of joking about how last year you guys were in the trenches after seeing a TikTok that made suffering look like a beautiful, unappreciated art. But it's not actually fun when it's dead February, you're freezing your ass off in your math class, and your teacher won't shut up about functions. But this is where the romanticization of everyday life gets dangerous. When we feel this sophomore slump, or senioritis, or whatever the current term is, it feels nothing like the TikTok. And here's where the fun gets slightly dark. Because yeah, aesthetics are creative, they're fun, they make life feel whimsical, but they also do something weird. They turn struggle into a vibe. When sadness becomes stylized, sad girl autumn seems cute until you realize it's just depression wrapped up in an itchy sweater, and we start treating real emotional pain like a Pinterest board. In my opinion, the two biggest perpetrators of this are the messy girl aesthetic, which rose in natural response to the clean girl, and 2018 core. Self-neglect becomes quirky, but if you look in the gnarly details, it reveals itself to be exactly what it beautifies. Messy, but with an overarching ugly unseen before. The messy girl aesthetic is fun and cool, until you realize what you're actually seeing isn't a party girl too busy having fun to clean her room, but a dress covered in vomit that is months old. Rat Girl Summer, that's not a trend. That's me needing a nap and an Advil. But the internet reframes it, so we have that kind of deniability. You can say, no, I'm not struggling. I'm participating in a cultural moment. But beyond culturally unacceptable grossness, there can be some very genuine danger in these aesthetic movements, which sounds so stupid because what am I even saying? An aesthetic is basically just a glorified collage. But take the 2018 aesthetic, defined by the Sister Squad, yellow vans, rainbows, and the Jewel Pod. For what the Jewel Pod did for teenage drug consumption, it's literally iconic. It gets tied to this bright aesthetic defined by good vibes, and almost perpetuates this idea that with nicotine consumption comes a gateway to a certain happy vibe inaccessible to those sober. Now obviously this isn't the culture's intention, but guilty by association is still guilt in itself. Now I never caved to the Jewel itself, but imagine the impact that it's had on teens across the globe. They see this perfect idea of what teenage life is supposed to look like, this ideal aesthetic, and here's something they can do to associate with a desired look. And it's not just a 2018 effect. It's what 13 did for cigarettes, or Euphoria for sleeping with your friend's boyfriend. Now, I'm being extreme with these examples, I know, but it just goes to show how much sheer influence and power these seemingly stupid collages can have on everyday life. So coming back to the original question, why is everything an aesthetic now? Well, the simple answer is because we want to feel understood. Categorizing ourselves under a certain aesthetic allows us to feel cool, special, or in control, even when we're falling apart. It's the simple deflection of, I'm not depressed, I'm just endorsing my messy girl aesthetic. Aesthetics help us cope, express ourselves, belong, escape, and joke about our struggles. But they also flatten us, trivialize real pain, and pressure us to perform in every waking moment. But here's the secret. You're allowed to live a life that's not curated, not optimized, not aesthetic. You can be messy, unglamorous, human, and ironically, that's the best aesthetic of them all. Alright, that's all I have for you guys today. If you have any thoughts, comments, video ideas, leave them down below. Smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next week.